It's CGTN's first debate show. I'm Yang Xinmeng. What you're seeing now is our special stage in the metaverse, where our guests from all around the world will be joining us, meeting each other, and debating. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are currently streaming on various media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Weibo, WeChat, Bilibili, Yangshiping, and of course, CGTN's official website. We also have many audiences joining us here in the metaverse. Welcome you all. Now, feel free to join our discussions and share your opinions anytime with the hashtag What's the Talk. We are very much looking forward to hear your thoughts. So first, let's welcome our lovely guests joining us online. Guxi from Beijing, China, welcome back.
Hi everyone. I'm so happy to be back.
Welcome to have you again. Kate Galigava from Belarus, welcome.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to be back here with you, and I'm very excited for this new debate round.
Welcome. And Jim Fields from the United States. Hi, Jim.
Hey, guys. Happy to be back.
Welcome. And Michał Bozacki from Poland. Welcome.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me again. I'm glad to be back here, and I can't wait for the debate.
Good to see you again. And let's welcome June Tam Min from Singapore. Welcome to the show.
Hello, I'm so happy to be glad, and I can't wait for another exciting debate session.
And last but not least, Enoch Wong from Hong Kong, China. Welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm very much looking forward to a heated debate.
Well, me too here. Well, so glad to have you all back. As you know, today is going to be the last episode of our show, for this season. So can't wait to see your arguments tonight. And today we are going to talk about generation labels and stereotypes. Well, according to Pew Research Center, Gen Z is the most diverse generation ever. And that being said, there are many labels attached to them, such as digital natives, financially minded, politically progressive, or hypersensitive. And look at the topics we have debated previously: career path choices, consumption concepts, and social media usage habits. We selected those topics from social media. Those are the most asked questions about Gen Z. It's like the whole world is eager to use these various criteria to define the generation. So today we'd like to forward this question to you. Does the generation really need a label? And do these people really share common traits? Can labels really define Generation Z? Yes or no? So that's our topic today. I know you all have a lot to express on this. We have Guxi and Jim in team yes for the labels, Kate and Michał against it in team no, and June and Enoch in team neutral. Well, as usual, we did a survey on social media beforehand. And in the very last episode today, we have a record-breaking margin of victory, 80.4 to 19.6. Let's take a look. So sample size, 1,010. Team no wins by a heavy score. It seems most Gen Zers value individual expression and avoid labels. So team yes, this is going to be a hard battle. What's your take?
Feeling very pressure, but also excited.
I'm also very excited. Now, this time we'll start from team yes in the first round. Let's take a look at the rules first.
Our rules are as follows. Each team consists of 2 players. The oppositions will battle it out during the first round to attract the neutral team to join their sides in order to battle together in the second round. And Team Neutral has the opportunity to ask both oppositions questions after their statements. Round 2 is a free debate, and everyone gets to raise their questions. But please do remember that the individuals in the neutral position have the right to turn cold. Therefore, they can still change their minds after the second round, based on what impressed them the most.
All right, so that was the rule. Are you all clear about it? And to those of you who are watching, you can also get involved by sharing with us your ideas, concerns, questions, or stories. We welcome all different views. Just comment below and let us know. Now, teams, get ready. Can we be defined by labels? We start with team yes. Time limit is 2 minutes for each person. And after the first argument from both sides, the neutrals can ask questions. So Jim, take the lead.
Absolutely. So the first thing I want to point out today, guys, is that we're not debating whether labels are good or bad. We're debating whether labels can define Gen Z, yes or no. And I am on team yes. And the first thing I want to say is that Gen Z, this expression itself, is a label. So if you consider it in that sense, can labels define Gen Z? We have to remember Gen Z itself is a label. This is a term that means a classifying phrase or name that's applied to a thing. So if that's true, then in that way, our yes team has already won. But labels are important. As humans, we use labels to process information, to organize information. And without labels, you could enter into a situation where things become very chaotic. Labels are allowing us to classify things, to process things, to understand our world and information. So in that sense, they're very important. And another thing I think that's important to mention is when it comes to Generation Z and labels, it's not just about labels that are being applied by other people to members of Generation Z. Generation Z people are born between 1997 and perhaps 2012. And the thing that makes them unique is many of them are born using social media. And when it comes to social media use, a lot of these young people are using labels themselves. If you look at, for instance, Instagram, where they're using hashtags or usernames that are tied to specific identities or types of labels. So it's not just about people outside of Generation Z who are using labels to define them. Gen Z themselves is actually also using labels to define their own life experience themselves on social media. And when you think about labels, they're not just bad things. They enable you to be part of a community. If you think about something like a skater or a punk rocker or a musclehead, these are all labels that allow people to join a community. And being part of a community can bring you a lot of fulfillment in life. So for all those reasons, I think labels can define Gen Z.
Thank you, Jim. And Nihal from Team No, what's your argument?
Okay, so I agree with Jim. So our brains are set up this way to see and recognize patterns. And sometimes the patterns are there, sometimes there aren't. But yeah, this is mostly fine for inanimate things. It lets us make sense of the chaos of our world. But I would argue that when it comes to describing people, whether it's a group or a generation or individual people, these labels are just not enough. We as human beings have to think deeper. So using those labels is categorizing. So the categorization can be broad or narrow, but when it's based on a narrow idea and you dismiss other assets in the process, it can be pretty much just stereotyping. So I feel like humans are just far too complicated to label. And most people don't like to be encapsulated by just one word, even if that word is positive. And we can see that the labels can be untrue and hurtful to the people who are labeled, but the labels can be kind of untrue, hurtful to people who label themselves, actually. So we can see this on the internet, for example, how much fighting is between people, let's say, like brand loyalty or like console gamers versus PC gamers and stuff like this. So labeling yourself can be toxic as well. And I think like the most important thing here is that anyone can change. So labels we give today may not be true tomorrow, and a label might come to hurt you later if you label yourself. So yeah, I think this shortcut is just, labeling is just not enough in the case of human beings, whether it's an individual or a generation like this. And yes, you could argue that Gen Z is a label in of itself, but I would argue it's kind of like a trend. So a generation doesn't define us. It's the generation. This is pretty much like sort of marketing talk or something like this. We have to see progress in our history. Yeah, but anyway, labels can define humans. That's my most important point.
Thank you, Mahal. Now, June and Enoch, each of you can ask one question. It's only one, so think carefully. It will help you make the decision in the next round. June?
Okay, I have a label. I have a question for the team yes. And my question is, Jim, do you think Gen Z labels are limiting them? You mentioned in your speech that Gen Zs are very good at social media. And so we have the label as technology natives. So do you think everybody will have the pressure of being good at technology? For example, someone who in the past wanted to do something like more traditional, for example, being a teacher, do you think they have the pressure to be good at technology?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, June. Is there a pressure for people to perform a certain way if there's a label that's applied to them? But I think it also brings up an important point, which is that there can be good labels and there could be bad ones. And this example about technology is probably a good one. I mean, in 2022, especially given what happened with COVID, we all have to be good at technology. For all of us to get on this call today that we're on, using video conferencing, we all have to be pretty good and able to use technology. So I think in general sense, for new generations, we don't want to button people into specific roles or labels that aren't comfortable for them. However, labels can be aspirational, they can be powerful, they can enable people to think about themselves in a new way. I think as long as we're not forcing people into a label that they're not comfortable with, they can be very powerful.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you, Jim.
All right.
I think then that is nice because I have a question for Nicole. So Nicole, you mentioned about how you don't like being labeled by, or you don't like being associated by one label. But as our host mentioned at the very beginning, Jen said being associated with multiple labels. Do you think that is a better solution? Or do you think, as the discussion we just had, there are good labels which can be helpful and would that benefit sort of give more than its disadvantages that it might have?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I have this idea that no label is inherently good or bad, and they are in a sense all bad. In a way, I wouldn't want to be labeled anything, whether it's good or bad, just because people can change, the labels can change, and sometimes a label sticks, and it can be hurtful to you. Yeah, but if we were to use labels, of course it's better to use multiple than just one, because one is just a really, really narrow scope, and multiple are still narrow. It's still a narrow perception, even if it's multiple labels. And in the case of Gen Z, it's like labeling. Some labels can even in a way cancel themselves out. I think this is the paradox, that sometimes the more labels we give, then we find contradictions. So for example, Gen Z, some people would say they're diverse, open-minded because of the internet, but other would say it's narrow-minded actually, that they're narcissistic, stuff like this. So I think that any labels are just dangerous in a way. And of course, we as humans have to categorize things. They're needed for communications. It's better to have more than one, but still labels are dangerous, and just use them with caution.
Do I have time for follow-up question?
Nope. Save it for the later section.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you.
All right, now let's move on to the second speakers from both teams. Guxi from Team Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I do think label is an easy way to bind people together. And it's also a tool to rationalize human behavior in a bigger scope, and a reference for people to find explanation, like zodiac, right? By the way, I'm a Capricorn. Also, I personally don't believe this true self. Also doubt if our own version of knowing ourselves is the closest to the truth. For example, I'm constantly stunned by my therapist, but how much more my therapist know more about me than myself. And it's also because he got this huge pool of samples. And also, of course, of his sharp insight of human nature. Therefore, our behaviors become predictable through data. And I do like labels because they provide various sanctuaries for me, even sometimes it means being misinterpreted. But hey, just imagine being liked is nothing special. It could be out of good manners, but being hated is indeed something, because nothing could be more genuine than dislike and even hatred. So I'm fascinated by receiving different emotions, and that just shows how stereoscopic and individual I am. So living with different labels provides different angles. It's just like a metaverse in a more realistic way, and you get to play so many roles in parallel worlds. So I would like to say, in short, label is just a start and probably an inspiration. It's not toxic if you use it properly, and it will lead to this never-end unimpeding self-exploration journey. Therefore, I totally embrace being labeled and very much enjoying the fun of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Guxi. And Kate from Team No, what's your argument?
I would like to start my speech with a question to the host, our guests, and the dearest audience. What is Generation Z? Can you give a definition to this notion? In my opinion, it's such a complex idea and a notion just like culture, love, and freedom. So it would be very weird if I would be asked to define such a huge group of people to be named one single label. That's why I don't really see why we should label it this way. Each and every one of us is diverse, unique personality who'd like to be interpreted in many different ways. So my second argument is that when a person frequently uses labels to evaluate people around him, understanding of a certain group of people will gradually shift from a personality to just a simple collection of labels. And I don't think it's possible to give a single label to a generation of people born in 1995 and later, because I've got a question: who is about to set these limits, right? Who is about to set these time limits and the boundaries? Being a young student myself, I wouldn't like to be labeled this way, as I've got many other personality traits. And Gen Z just seems to generalize all the people of a certain age group and of a certain generation. One single label cannot express my or anyone else's personality. So from my experience, personality of Gen Z is way more than just, the labels that we shared in the videos before. For example, I'm often labeled like an iron lady, but at the same time, I also have many other hobbies like traveling, studying, live streaming, shopping, learning, so on and so on. So labeling is a simplified judgment without thinking much about what it actually means. It's kind of a tool or an instrument to generalize people from one region, ethnicity, or an age group. You can label anyone for a single action. For example, if you're being too straightforward, you're called a 直男. If you are from Dongbei region in China, then you are supposed to be cold resistant. This way of thinking is way too simplistic, and this discourages independent, broad, and inclusive thinking.
Thank you. We get your point. Well, now, June and Enoch, any questions, judgments, doubts?
June, do you want to go first?
Okay, so I have another question for the Yes team. So this question is for Gusi. So I would like to bring out something which is matchmaking. So traditional matchmaking, actually, we make use of labels to match together people with similar characteristics. So do you think Generation Z or future generations, do they benefit from this kind of system where you use labels to match people?
Thank you, June, for your question. I love this one. Also because from my personal experience, I was just recommended to add 3 labels to my Xiaohongshu account because I didn't do that. And my friend told me it's so much easier for people who search for fitness or search for artificial intelligence to find you and spot you. So if you don't put this label on it, it would be so much more difficult. And I think that's in a way what you mentioned, matchmaking. It's not only between people who are similar to each other, but also as target and also as influencer and among their people they are targeting at. So of course, yes, my answer is people benefit a lot from labels, and it's a fast and shortcut way for people to find each other, especially for you to shorten your time to do the research, to do the search, and also to find people who might interest you.
Thank you, Gusi. Makes sense.
Thank you. Enoch?
So my question then is to Kate. So Kate, as an influencer, right, as a digital native, in a lot of our application, a lot of times algorithm label users so that we can provide useful content to the group of users, right? Do you think there is benefit to that? If not, if we should not label people or group of Gen Z, then what are the alternative solutions? Are there more efficient, effective solutions to do that?
Yeah, thank you for a wonderful question, Enoch. I think that's a great point. In terms of using social media and being a social media influencer myself, labels have certainly benefited me in many ways. But in terms of being a unique, diverse personality, I wouldn't like to be labeled this way. Although I might say that being a social media influencer, labels have actually helped me in many ways. But if we look, but it's rather little perspective. If we look at it from a wider angle, I wouldn't like to be just represented as a single label or a single hashtag, because this is not my personality. This is not what I'm trying to transmit to my audience, to my followers and people out there in the internet. Yeah, that's my point.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Now, June and Enoch, take some time to decide which team you want to join. And before the show, we did a Vox Pop for more opinions on this topic. Let's take a look.
Justice. Lucky and strong personality.
Smiler. Too much.
A short guy.
Outgoing and confident.
Pretty and an obedient girl.
Uncertain about their future.
I would say patient.
Yes, I like it.
I think it's a really good quality.
I don't enjoy the label.
I love these two labels.
I don't like people placing labels on me.
I don't really like these labels, especially for the good girl label.
I didn't really care about it.
I would never demand to be called by my generation on the label as long as it's related to cultural experiences or lifestyle.
It can make new friends, know my most outstanding characteristics.
It's our brain making irrational shortcut and usually overstating people's quality and personality.
Generation Z sees the world much differently than the older generation because they grew up in the face of continuous technological advancements.
It brings a lot of opportunity to me.
I'm a little bit concerned about those who are focusing more on generational label rather than people's experiences, people's values.
One individual shouldn't be bounded within one sole adjective.
We will be happier when we less concerned with others' opinions and just be true to ourselves.
Welcome back. Well, there were some good reasons why people like or dislike being labeled. I hope that brought you more clues in the next round. Now, June and Enoch, now you're going to choose a team to battle together in the next round. What's your decision? June?
The yes team had such good arguments, almost convinced me, but because of the nature of this question, as well as combined with the opposing team's arguments, I would like to join the no team.
Oh, okay. Enoch?
That was such a twist. I was worried because I wanted yes, and I'm so glad that I'm gonna get yes. Because I thought June is gonna say yes. But yeah, yes. That's the team I'm going for. Yeah.
All right. Tell us the reason why you took this move.
June?
Okay, so I think in combination of both of the members from the no team, I think everything, including labels, can be used to a certain extent before it starts to have a detrimental effect. And so if we start digging further into the definition of the term label, we realize that actually in day-to-day life, we come across it in terms of when we're shopping and when we're choosing groceries and everything, those things have labels for them to indicate distinctive qualities, which helps us to choose and pick them. But then we as human beings, we are so complex and we each have unique experiences and diverse qualities. So I think we can't be fit into different separate boxes. It just doesn't work like this. And I think that's what differs us from non-living things. And we have so much in store and to share. And I think the only possible way to get to know another human being is by putting in effort and time into understanding. So I think labels can help us identify qualities or characteristics of a person, but only on a very superficial level.
All right, thank you. Enoch?
Okay, so for me, I think Jim kind of had me at the very first sentence, right? I think Gen Z itself is a label. And I think like for me, I think everyone might have a different definition of label, but for me, label is pretty much the average of an average. I don't think it really sort of speak to every single one of the members of the population of Gen Z. But I think there is certain advantages of labeling a group. And I think the Yes team has made a very, very good argument with that. And last but not least, I love to be a part of the underdog team. So I think the 2080, I think we have a very, very good chance of of completely reversing the situation, in my opinion.
All right, thank you, Enoch. Now we have the new lineup for the next round, 3 versus 3. We have Jim, Gushi, and Enoch on team yes. We have Kate, Mohal, and June on team no. At the same time, I see new audiences tuning in. We are currently having a debate here on generation labels and stereotypes. So can labels define a generation? Should we stop labeling? And how does history and culture shape our identity and our characteristics? We are currently streaming on various media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Weibo, WeChat, Bilibili, Yangshipin, and CGTN's official website. So what is your take on this? Which team do you support? Who's your favorite debater? Have you been labeled before? Do you like it or not? Join our discussions and send your comments below anytime with the hashtag What's the Talk. All right, now before we move on to the next round, guys, I want to ask, have you been labeled before? What is the label you received the most? We'll start from team yes.
Cute.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Jim bro.
I've gotten a few. When I was a kid, it was actually as a nerd. I hang out with a lot of nerdy kids, so I was labeled as a nerd, which I didn't like as a kid, but I think nerd has become cool since then. So I think it's kind of a good thing now.
How do you transform from nerd to gym bro?
Well, it's easy. You go to the gym.
All right, Gushi.
I like it. As I said, I like to be interpreted in so many ways and in different people's perspective. And I'm fascinated by how so differently people could read into you and think they know the real you. So I like the mystery it creates between me and people who are trying to read me. So cute is fine, sharp is fine, fearless is fine, brave is fine. I think they're all me.
Yes, you are. And Enoch?
So I think I said in one of the videos that we did previously for the promotion, so young looking is one of the things, or look young for my age. I think I get that quite a lot. But besides that, actually, because of some of my past educational experiences or companies I work for, etc., I think smart or clever or intelligent is one of the labels that I get most. It's actually, some would say it's a positive one, but I think sometimes, as most of the people here in this group are parts of great elite institutions, sometimes you give an expectation that is hard to reach. And it's actually much easier to impress people and to rise to the occasion. And at times, actually the other way around, it's much easier to disappoint people, right? When people have expectation of you. So sometimes, having such a high expectation is not necessarily a good thing. But so I somehow agree with what Mikhail mentioned. There's no, there's bad labels. There's no good or bad from that sense. But I'm going to stay with team yes.
Thank you.
All right. Team no. Kate, what is the label you received the most?
Yeah, so just like I have mentioned in the video, the one that I was really surprised by is Iron Lady, because I look very cute and I'm not that tall. So a lot of people usually the first thing they say it's cute, but then they realize that I've got very powerful, ambitious personality and they say that I'm an Iron Lady. But when I was younger, a lot of my family members and my friends back in my home country used to call me Котенок, which means kitten in Russian, because it's actually very similar to my name, Katyusha, Котенок. And actually some of my friends in China also say that I look like a kitten because of my eyes. So they change color and the size sometimes. So I don't think there is anything wrong with that. It's actually very cute and it also creates some beautiful memories. But at the same time, I wouldn't like to be limited to those labels because I'm way more than just this Iron Lady, right? I am powerful, I'm very hardworking, but I also have a lot of other hobbies, just like I mentioned. I love filming, I love public speaking, debating, hosting, traveling, learning languages. So I'd like to be defined way more than this single little labels. Just like as I have mentioned before, I'm a diverse, unique, big personality. That's why I don't think that we should think in this very generalized ways.
All right, thank you. Now, Mahal, I know you hate it, but you must receive a lot.
So I guess I have a similar story with Jim. So, it is nerd, and then you start doing something. For me, it was like getting really hard into music. So I became a music nerd, music guy, something like this. And yeah, it is kind of accurate, but I also don't like, because for some people it could be a good thing that, well, it signifies that I know a lot about it. But on the other hand, for me, I don't like how close it is to something like a music snob, like a real like party popper who comes to a party and then says that the music is too bad. This like this song is too popular or something. Put on some jazz. Like I don't like this association. Yeah, so that's one thing. And the other I mentioned in the video that was like, for me, a real symbol of this discussion we have today, when I was an introvert all throughout my childhood, and then suddenly I'm an extrovert when I'm an adult. And I mean, so where is this introverted kid? I mean, I'm still myself. It's not two different people, but it's just the labels are so inaccurate sometimes that, yeah, that's why I don't like labels at all.
All right. June?
So similarly, I've been labeled as cute before, but because I have really skinny arms, so people sometimes say that like I'm weak. And like when there's like big winds, when there's like bad weather, they will be like, oh, be careful, you're going to be blown away by the wind. We have to protect you. So same as me, I've been trying to jump out from this label. I've been trying to practice yoga and focus on strength training so that people don't label me as that.
All right, from what you said, the labels you received the most, we have 3 cute ladies here, 2 nerds, and an intelligent young face. Congratulations, Enoch. Well, I think there's a question for you from our viewer on Facebook. He said, some people who are 35 look 20, some look 55. The way they act varies even more. So generation labels are not very useful compared to personality traits and interests. What's your take on this?
Me, right? So yeah. I think this is where I see there is a really unique or special advantages of being labeled or even being wrongly labeled, because I think everyone loves a comeback story. Everyone loves a story where you completely rip off the label and surprises everyone. So I like that aspect of it as well. So I think label for me is just a reference. And from there, what you do with the reference is up to you. I think it's very, very important that, we be ourselves and don't let label define us. I think label can help to define Generation Z because I'm in Team Yes, but they're not you, right? It's very, very difficult to live up to an expectation, and I guess it's easier to just be yourself because we are a group of people, Jen said, collection with many, many unique and amazing characteristics and qualities. We are not a single story, but label can help as a reference, but it doesn't have to be you. That's my take.
Okay, that's a interesting point. Now, we created a word cloud based on 25 articles about the labels on Gen Z, including reports from CNN, BBC, Deloitte, etc. And now, as we can see, most of the words are positive. There are, there are passionate, adventurous, confident, but there are also like narrow-minded. I feel like it's almost impossible to avoid labels completely, because usually when we say something cannot be defined, we are saying it's diversified. But look at a word cloud, diversified can also be a label. Now, I can understand most of them. So for you, what is the most surprising one you find in here? Mahal?
Yeah, I guess for me, this word cloud illustrates my point from before. It says narrow-minded. This is the most surprising to me, because it's also, apart from narrow-minded, it also says diversified, connective, curious. Like, how does this even fit? How can this match? And yeah, it just, well, the fact that these labels are opposite, I think, illustrate my point, how it's hard to label anything. Like the label is never captures the full picture.
All right, some of them are just like a conflict with each other.
Yeah, I have to agree with Michal, because basically just a point I made before is that we cannot label something that different. All of the representatives of Gen Z are so different, so various, so diversified. So some would be narrow-minded, others would be open-minded, some would be digital natives, very active on social media, while others won't. So it's very controversial. How are we supposed to refer to this word cloud when defining or trying to define Gen Z, or are we trying to label Gen Z again?
June, what's your take?
I think, I agree with Mahal and also Kate. I think it's contradicting and it's a bit confusing to look at. But I think like if there's like a party who just wants to learn about Generation Z in a very short time, I think it's fine. I would show them this as well. It's a good overview of Generation Z. But if they want to know more about Generation Z, I would give them other pieces of information that would complete a fuller story.
All right, Team Yes, what do you find is the surprising one?
I find spend money quite surprising, because that's normal, right? Everybody does that. Who doesn't spend money? So we spend money, and then everybody gets put a label on it. Spend money.
Well,
the first generation ever to spend money.
I read an article saying Gen Z are the shrewd consumers. They spend money more wisely than the previous generations. Probably that's why.
I see.
Yeah.
So
more wisely.
This is so controversial again. Some people say that.
I'm not quite sure that's the case.
I want to say this is a charm of it, because Kay just said if you want to be narrow-minded, and probably also you're open-minded people, and that's the point of putting label on it. Probably not on you as an individual, but on a behavior or on an interaction you have with another individual. And that could also be a label. So you're not defined as a person by this word, but the temporary act or the temporary behavior you're having, or the social conversation or your social act. I think that's also what label means, not the definition or not the expectation you have to catch up with or live up to.
Thank you. Jim?
I think there's a lot of surprising words on the list. I think the one that I find the most interesting is mental health challenging, because I think actually, it's not something that a lot of people might want to admit, but it's certainly something that actually we've all had to deal with, in the last several years, especially with, COVID and different challenges. So I think it's actually, surprising to see that on there. It's good to see that it's being acknowledged. And I hope that actually for Gen Z that, people lean into that. I also admire Gusi from our team for talking about her therapist during the sharing today, because I think therapy is a wonderful thing. And label or no label, I think that people should be concerned with their mental health.
All right, Enoch.
So I think for me, if we go back to the word cloud, right? I think the answer is kind of there for the opposition team, because conflicting is actually one of the label as well.
Yes.
And I think that comes from the context of Generation Z, right? I think the world is changing so fast in such a fast pace that I think conflicting sort of label is happening as we have found. But I think for me, one of the most surprising one, I guess, is the cat dog keeper. I'm from Hong Kong, China. Like that's why most of our flats don't even allow pets. So I never had a single cat and dog in my life. I think I have maybe like a goldfish as a pet because of a project that we need to do in school, and that's the only pet I ever have. But I think it's difficult and challenging enough taking care of yourself. So that's why I never feel like I'm responsible for another life, like cat and dog in my life yet. So hopefully maybe I would appreciate having a pet one day, but I haven't yet have that. So that's me.
All right. I see a Facebook comment saying it's because of limited connotations. He had been called a computer nerd in some circles, but that doesn't stop me from riding my bike every day, working with power tools and splitting wood. So, Mahal, do you think this can answer part of your question? Introvert versus extrovert?
Yes, definitely. And I can share a little story about myself. So back in high school, I was in a maths physics class, which we focus mostly on like computer stuff and also like really sciencey, let's say, subjects. And in Poland, you have two words. So that's humanista and ścisłowiec, which are kind of like the science guys and the humanistic studies guys, which are, so you would have like physics and maths and chemistry on one side, and then on the other side you would have stuff like history, law, or poetry, things like this. So back in high school, in my high school, this was actually a really big deal. Like people really felt that we are the science people and we are the humanistic studies people, so to speak. And the thing about myself was that I was in a maths class, but so there was so much pressure on the science guys that we're the science guys. If you go into science, if you go into computers, you're gonna be successful in your future. But if you go into poetry, if you go into languages, then you're done. Pretty much. There's no hope for you, which is so ridiculous, like looking back at it. But for me, myself, I was the maths guy in high school, and then I went to a technical university. I was there only for 6 months or so, and I quit it to study Chinese language. And this is not to say like I did well in the technical university, but I just felt that maybe that's not what I want to do right now. Maybe the science guy label that everyone gave me, it doesn't encompass everything that I am. So I think like for the person that asked for this comment, he might be facing the same dilemma. It's like being a computer guy and then being like making stuff with your hands, basically, like tools and stuff. These can go hand in hand, and it's just that you need to get rid of a label. For example, a label computer guy, you can't leave your desk, right? But you can leave your desk. You're an individual. You can be, the word doesn't define you. That's what, yeah. So I would agree with that comment that it shows my idea well.
Can I add one very quick comment? Yeah. So I'm like a perfect stereotype or live up to the expectation of being a Chinese. So I study mathematics in university. So I live up to the expectation that Chinese are supposed to be good at math. But then I like, so going back to the story, I feel like this is interesting, and why I love label is that so I spent a summer, my year 2 summer in Pakistan and in India for volunteering. And then when I go to a job interview at a top management consultants firm, and then they find that label very interesting, right? You know, why a math graduate did volunteering in Pakistan and India during a summer. So I think this redefining label surprising factor is what would grab attention very quickly, as opposed to if you don't have that expectation, don't have that label that, you know, if you're a math graduate, you're supposed to, you know, sit behind a desk and do assignment and problem set every day, and not supposed to go outside and explore and be adventurous. So I think there is advantages of being labeled, and there's even bigger advantages of redefining who you are and just being yourself. Because we all
so just to add words to Enoch's story, I think this this just perfectly like describes, don't let the label define yourself. Yep. And if there are labels around you, you define the labels. It's not the other way around. That's important.
Or use labels as your equipment. I thank you, Alok, for this perfect example of yourself. And I would also like to use the other teammate of us as another example, because a personal story. Me and Jim met in 2015, right, in San Francisco. And back then there was like the tech event, and Jim walked in, and I saw him immediately. I thought, oh, this is like pretty techie guy. That's the impression he left on me a couple of years ago. And then several years later, and he's on my WeChat, and then all of a sudden he kind of become this Superman shape. And I'm just wondering what happened to this guy. He got electrical strike or something. What happened? And that actually added more charm to this personality, and made me even more curious to know what's his personal journey. And I want to even be more, getting a deeper connection with this person that I met a couple of years ago. So I'm not bothered by a label, and I'm not bothered by impression. I think it is because of the label put on him built this connection between us.
But at the same time, it's also making people think inside of the box rather than outside of the box, right? When people here in China meet me, they say, you're 战斗民族, you're a fighting nation. So you're supposed to be very tall, and you're supposed to be cold resistant. Well, I'm afraid of cold, and I'm very slim. I'm rating this. So people wonder, why do you look like this? Well, why should they wonder? Everyone is different. Like, people in my country are both short and tall. So why should you generalize? Why should you pick these labels and put them on me when you can think of me in many different ways, right? So it discourages thinking outside of the box.
Isn't it funny? Because I always tell my friends I ride Panda to go to school because I'm from Taiwan. And that's funny. I'm fine with it.
And I love this when some people
say like princess on a panda. Well, Kate, you're still a 战斗民族 because you are the Iron Lady, but a cute one.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, from the word cloud, I see MBTI and horoscope reader both at the same time. Guxi has mentioned that earlier, about 1 or 2 years ago, we asked people zodiac signs. That can be one of our labels. But this year, MBTI personality is viral. Now we go to each other and ask, what's your MBTI? And that has become a new label placed on us. So I'm curious to know how many of you have done the test before? Everyone except Guxi, and Kate?
I'm shifting, like, which one?
Have I done that? All right. I see there are people asking comments. Just in case you don't know, MBTI is a personality test. Initially, it is used to help individuals understand their own communication preference and how they interact with others. So basically, it tells you who you are and why you do things the way you do. So the test divides people into 16 different types indicated by a 4-letter abbreviation. Now, guys, 5 of you have done it before. What is your MBTI? Would you mind telling me? I am an ENFP.
And I am ENFJ.
ENFJ.
Yeah, ENFJ as well.
ENFJ.
What? Really?
Yeah, yeah. The modern zodiac.
You guys are so different.
Horoscope.
Who else? Enoch.
I think mine is ESTJ. Yes, ESTJ.
ESTJ. Now, Jim.
Mine is
INFP.
Yeah, mine is the same as Jim.
Oh, INFP.
So different.
The INFP is completely different from.
Yeah.
We are completely opposite.
Yeah, you're on different teams. That's fine. Well, I don't want to spend too much time here in the different types of MBTI. If you're interested, you can search it online and maybe do the test for yourself. Now, guys, do you think these labels match your personality? Or can they really define who you are? Just the 4 letters? And also, I mean, no matter it's the MBTI or zodiac signs or words from the word cloud.
I don't think it defines me, but I do think it concludes a period of my status. Like, actually, my MBTI changed throughout this year. It changed twice. So I changed from ENTP to ENFJ. So it's kind of like a big shift. And the reason was because I had a surgery. So you can see this big change happen to your life actually brought some changes to your personality or personal traits. And the good thing I take from this is, people care about you and they don't know how you feel like or don't know what this surgery has brought to you. So they asked me about my MBTI and I told them I shifted from T to F, which is from thinking to feeling. And that actually put her back to its place because she's like, oh, finally, you're a feeling person. You always use your logic, your brain to think about things, to rationalize things. Now you're following your heart, finally. So that's a gift. I'm happy you're finally feeling this way. And I am happy that my friends are feeling this for me. So I do think, no, I'm not defined by MBTI or labels, but it's a message it delivers, and it conveys a part of me at that time point, and conveys messages around to put people or to inform people. And I find it very useful.
Yeah, it's only part of you. It cannot define you by who you are, but because people change. So that's why the personality, that changes as well. Well, a lot of people said earlier that don't let the labels define you. Like, we cannot be defined. So in your perspective, what is the image of Generation Z?
It's a pretty hard question.
I think so. So I think it's very, very difficult to have label to define Generation Z, but I think the context itself defines Generation Z, right? Where, the previous generation, millennial, I think it's very, very interesting because they were born in a world without social media, without sort of, smartphones and computers, some of them, and have sort of gone through this evolution, right? Or even revolution in some way or form in technology. But whereas on the other hand, right, for people who are born after 1997, they're born in a world with all this technology, right? That's why they call technology native in the word cow. So I think the context define this generation as opposed to label. And because of this context, because, a lot of people wouldn't really understand how to dial on a phone before, because, they have smartphone on their hands, how to use fax machine, etc. Or even what is a floppy disk, right? What is a CD? Right, they never heard of as such this technology because they haven't gone through this. So I guess the context define it, not necessarily the label, but because of the context and as what Gusi mentioned, under different circumstances that make you who you are and create the personality of who you are.
Yeah, so I agree with Enoch here. So maybe we could just, take a step back and see how labels becoming more popular, like you said, through hashtags, description on social media, MBTI, astrology, brand loyalty, stuff like this. Maybe it's not a Gen Z thing. Maybe it's just a reaction of a human brain to the overwhelming amount of information on the internet and the general trends that we see around us. And those general trends don't define Gen Z as in different from other generation, but this feels like a humanity, like a civilization thing, and not like a generation thing to me, like a byproduct of the time. And still, like, the trends don't define people of our generation as people. Like, every person is still an individual.
Yeah. We have a YouTube viewer also saying this. He said, don't fall to the pressure to use good things for superficial idealism. You don't need to identify yourself with a fixed set of stereotypes. So, all right, thank you guys. We are spending such a long time in this section. Now let's move on to the next round. This is going to be a free debate session. We added 1 minute to each team. Now you have 5 minutes to share in total. And there's a timer on the screen, so remember to keep an eye on it. Now, June and Enoch, you are going to debate with your team together in this session, but remember, you have a chance to turncoat afterwards. You can change your mind depending on how the session goes, so use it wisely. Now, this time we start from Team No.
Okay, so I guess I have a little question about what we are talking about, matchmaking online, and I thought about like what you guys think about like dating apps, and because there's this saying that when people are similar, they attract each other, but there are also sayings that opposites can attract too. And how does it work with labels in this way? Is it a good thing or a bad thing in this context?
Yes.
So could I add my arguments first? Could I, because before Enoch just mentioned that me being as a social media influencer can enjoy some of the labels and the what the good things that they bring to influencers, but there are way more followers on social media, right? Average users. So I think we should talk about the negative impact that labels and categorizing cost people. Do I fit in? Do I not fit in? How much negative impact in terms of mental issues, in terms of negative emotions and feelings it has brought to many people, especially those who are not very immature and do not know how to use social media properly. So I think that in this case, a labeling has actually caused a lot of issues on social media, especially for those following influencers and chasing those labels, trying to fit in some category.
I will try to combine my answer to both McCall and Kate. So just as a disclaimer, I never used a dating app before, so I don't know how it works, but I roughly kind of get the concept of it. So I think this is where, for example, in the dating app, you can swipe left and right, right? It is an algorithm that gives you a context. Without those labels, they would not know who to push to you, right? But you, as an owner, or you have the agency to swipe left and swipe right for you. And this would help the algorithm to build a profile that better suited for you. Alternatively, using the language, they will build a better label, suitable label that would define you. And that's why I think label is good. And going back to Kate, same thing, right? You know, they as a user, I would get labeled, but I would also able to define who I am by spending as much time as possible watching, for example, Kate's live stream, because I love the live stream so much, and then they will push more Kate's video to me. Or alternatively, right, if someone come along that I don't like it, even though it fits the exact label that I might have, I might just swipe and go to the next video. So I feel like, as Jen said, we have the agency to control who we are, but label is a great reference, or Gusi mentioned, I love that word, it's a great tool and equipment to help us to navigate this very complex world. That's my take. Thank you.
Yeah, so I guess on this this way we agree that the labels don't define Gen Z. Back to the topic, they don't define Gen Z, and you define the labels.
No. So I think the question is that we can label Gen Z. It is not the matter of whether label can define Gen Z, right? I think that's a different thing. I think we can label Gen Z. I think we can do that, and there's also advantages of doing so.
Okay, I agree that there's advantages, but whether or not it can define us, it's a different story. And so on the topic of matchmaking, the difference between traditional matchmaking and I think matchmaking today is that traditional matchmaking, there is less autonomy for the parties involved to actually choose. And, you know, everything happens so fast. Many of times it's the families who's choosing who they matchmake with. And nowadays, matchmaking like Tinder, like what Enoch said just now, we have autonomy to choose who we want to talk to. If we like this person, maybe based on the label, we can decide to talk more with this person. And so that goes beyond the label of what they have on their profile. So I think labels is just something so like superficial and exterior. It helps us, but then what's behind the label is more. And that's the thing that we have to discover.
I agree. What's behind the label is more. And I know Kate is charming. It's an Iron Lady. You got a lot to offer, and also on June. But the thing is, here in this digital era, everybody just got a few seconds to offer to attract your audience eyes. And we all know we are like so diverse individuals, so many aspects of us, and we want to share, want to put everything on the table. But people just got a few seconds. So you need to decide what to put first. What's the appetite? You need to catch people's stomach by offering the most attractive appetite. This is what labels for. And we need to distinguish from definition and labels. Don't make labels as your enemies. Oh, I hate these labels, or people keep giving me labels, or I'm just like offer these labels and I hate so much. I'm 战斗民族. I think it's fine. It's just people give you a view, right? And you just constantly meet new people, and you just constantly be given new labels. You're not going to be battling with these new labels in your entire life. Live with it, and you just be happy that you get to be seen in so many ways, and shows that you're a colorful person. That's my personal take from this. So live with label, be friend with label. Don't make it enemies.
Yes,
but
Christine,
still,
it's kind of
okay.
true in terms of social media, right? But what if we're talking about labels outside of social media in our real life? I feel like they have added a lot of pressure to many people. Just like I said, for Enoch, as a very mature person, it's a reference, right? But for many others, it can be a restriction. It can make them feel nervous, especially when people go outside of social media and still try to fit in those hashtags and labels that they were given on the internet space. So, it's very debatable whether it's good or bad.
There's the other side of the story, because usually people see me as a girl from next door. And since I'm running a startup with my partners, so I went to see some government officials and they never take me seriously. This is a true story. So I showed up in the office and I said, "Oh, you sent an intern here." My colleagues. And I constantly got estimated like this and putting a label on me as intern or very junior or not like capable of dealing with things. And at first, of course, I was anxious and I was upset. And then I realized it could be a weapon because people keep underestimating me and I could keep offering more than expected. And I feel like, wow, this is a company who constantly give me surprise. And this is how I want all of our orders. So I do want to say, take advantage of people who are misinterpreting you or giving you maybe some views or labels you don't personally like, and then use it as a tool or as this leverage to open up a bigger opportunity or a bigger world. This is why we say, don't make it as a pressure and live with the pressure. Live it and use it as a tool.
Jim, you've been very quiet.
Yeah,
Spokesperson.
I think our team has made some amazing arguments. And I think actually the example that we're going back to that coming up about dating apps is quite interesting. And it comes down to whether the labels that are applied are ones that you use for yourself or ones that are being put upon you by other people. I think that's what both sides of today's debate are sort of going back and forth on. And when you do go on dating apps, and unlike Enoch, I'm not going to pretend that I have never used a dating app. I have used it before.
This is not pretending. I never use. You can check my phone. When
I'm on dating apps, one thing that's important for me as a pet owner is I made it clear that I was also looking to meet someone else who likes pets. Right. This is like sort of a fundamental part of my life and something that's important to me. And I also want to meet other people who have that same passion. And if it's someone who doesn't like pets and I have a lifestyle that involves pets, then we're probably not going to be a very good match. So overall, I think labels can be very useful, especially for Gen Z.
All right, time's up for Team Yes. Now, Team No, you still have 2 minutes to conclude your arguments.
So I guess one thing I wanted to touch upon was the debate around labels and social media, how as a social media influencer, you might need to conform to certain labels. And I wanted to kind of turn this around. So as a social media creator, a content creator, or an artist, like anyone creating anything, like be it social media content, be it music, be it films and everything, I think we can see in history how when an artist starts to bow down to the labels they're given. For example, an artist goes out there, makes some, let's say, jazz music, and then everybody expects them to play the jazz music for forever. And when we see an artist conforming to that, thinking, okay, that's my label, that's myself, we can often see how the career just detracts. The music albums are worse and worse. And this is basically sums up my point that we define the labels. When you have a social media influencer and they're making only one type of content, the person might get tired and burnt out. It's just defining yourself is dangerous, and you should define the labels and not let labels define you. Then that's my point for today.
Kate, June, still 50 seconds.
Go ahead.
I think definitely labels are not helpful in terms of diversity in our society. I feel like in a certain sense, for some people, especially, labels are restricting, and if they're not able to really make use of labels in a good way, it's just gonna make it very difficult for them to really go in paths that is different from what is expected from society. And so as Generation Z, we are becoming more and more open-minded. We will be embracing more kinds of diversity in our society. And so this kind of diversity, labels will not keep up with that. So that's my view on labels. I think in the future, hopefully, there won't be any more labels.
All right, thank you guys, thank you everyone. Now June and Enoch, take a second to think about your final decision. And before we reveal them, let's read some comments from our viewers. I see some comments coming in from YouTube. First one is here. Alan says, when you label me, you negate me. This is by Søren Kierkegaard. He is a Danish philosopher. And all right, and there are, second one, also from YouTube, digital natives is one of the labels I would keep as a badge of honor. Some labels are good, some aren't. Well, I have a question. Well, relating to this, I have a question for Team No. Are you rejecting only the bad labels or all labels? Mahal?
Yeah, I think I think my point is clear in today's debate. I'm rejecting all labels as definitions of a person. Like a person is too complicated to be labeled, but the person can be like a person can define their own labels, because labels, I guess this is also clear in our debate, that they're kind of a figure of speech that is hard to skip in any language. So labels will be from like just adjectives around people. But yeah, I would reject all labels, because there's no good labels, no bad labels, because the perception of the label can change, and a label always throws you into a certain group, and that is just not a good thing.
So going back to our debate topic, I think that today we're talking about Gen Z. If we're going to start debating about labels in general, I think it's going to take forever to say yes or no, because there are so many labels in our life, in our world. So I cannot deny some of the labels. I cannot deny that labels haven't been useful in my life. Our point is that Gen Z is just too diverse, too unique, too different just to be labeled under this huge notion. I'd like to clarify that. I'm not against labels. I'm not against definitions, because without these definitions and labels, I don't think that it would be possible to communicate to people, not just from other countries, but just from your neighborhood.
All right, thank you. June?
Yeah, I agree. I think labels are just a few words strung up together. And so it definitely cannot define Generation Z. If we're talking about fully defining, maybe on a very superficial level, using just a few words, maybe you can have a very brief overview of Generation Z. But if you really want to understand fully into what the Generation Z like to do, and it's really based on the individual person, and we can't be labeled as a group. It just complicates things, as we see from the previous picture, where we have a lot of conflicting labels, and I think that's the problem.
All right, thank you. And let's see, there are more comments here. Well, also a YouTube viewer. Labels are fixed categories. People are in a state of perpetual change. Yeah, that's true. We just talked about it. People change, so labels can't define them. But it just came to me that labeling, naming, and characterizing generation is not a new phenomenon. It's not only about Gen Z. Before Gen Z, we have goal-oriented baby boomers, we have slacker Gen X, we have narcissistic millennials, which is Gen Y. Why do you think we have these labels? I mean, there must be a reason that they exist. Are there any use of them? And how does history and culture shape these labels, shape our identity and our characteristics?
So I think it's the same reason why Gaokao exists.
Sorry?
Gaokao, the college examination, yes. We all know it's not the most efficient way or the most fair way to select talents, but this is it's the most efficient way. And we all know labels probably are not all true or apply perfectly into different people, but this is probably comparatively the most efficient way for people to matchmaking or get to know each other at the very beginning.
I still don't know why we are on the topic of matchmaking, but I don't know why. But going back, I think there is huge advantages of labeling. So for example, going back to the word cloud, right? One of the label is mental health challenges that people face. I think labeling people help people to find their own community, help to find a sense of belonging, help to overcome challenge together. If yes, we recognize everyone is different, but there is something common between us, particularly when we have common challenges that we don't know how to overcome. And finding and label help us to find community. There is particular challenges of Gen Z. For example, there is a huge generation of us which have spent a lot of our university life virtually without seeing and interacting with people. There are challenges, psychological, mental health challenges that we have to overcome and face. And then by labeling us as Gen Z, it helps us to find peers, it helps us to find help. And I think it is very, very useful, extremely it's functional from that perspective. And I just want to make one last point, and that's why I love this show, What's the Talk, right? I think give me an extra perspective. Jim was so wise. I think I think it's the most wise sentence I've heard in terms of, whether, I know debate is over, but whether you put the label onto yourself and whether other people put the label onto Gen Z and whether that make any difference. I think for me, it make a huge difference if we have the agency to put label onto appoint ourselves and therefore help us to be in control from that sense.
Thank you.
As human beings, we are just used to simplifying everything to make things easier for us. And so when we meet somebody, it's just easier for us to put them into different boxes. But the thing with that is that it's so easy to oversimplify things. For example, I have 2 boxes. One of them is for smart people. One of them is for people who are not smart. So what about the people in between? Or what about the people that have different kinds of smartness? For example, people who are emotionally smart, intelligently smart, people who are street smart. These are things that very often are excluded from these labels. So I think there are dangers that comes with labels, but I do agree with the point that Enoch said just now. If we make use of these labels as tools, I think they can be beneficial as well, but we have to be very careful.
All right, we have a YouTube viewer, Andre, also he's answering this question. He said, we should stay outside the boxes. Human brains work with pattern recognition. Don't make your measuring device draw conclusions around. Labels are just something that unveil the experiences of the person in front of you. All right, so I think I'm going to play a video of you guys, the most unexpected label people have attached to your guest here. We already talked about some labels earlier in the show, but let's take a look at the video.
What's the most unexpected label have people attached to you?
Iron Lady.
An extrovert.
People often say I look young.
Girl from neighborhood. Sorry, that's 3 words. Neighborhood?
I have been labeled as weak before, mainly because of my gender and my physical build.
Gym bro. And just to be clear, my name is Jim, J-I-M. I'm someone who likes to go to the gym and likes to lift weights. So sometimes I get called being a gym bro.
Are you happy to be labeled that way?
Well, when I first heard this label, I was quite surprised. But then I realized that it's just a part of my personality. A lot of my friends say that the first impression of me is this cute little girl. But when they get to know me better, they realize that I've got quite ambitious, powerful, and outgoing personality. And yes, I'd like to be interpreted in various ways, just like a kaleidoscope.
I mean, who doesn't want to look young for their age? But you start to think twice when you realize young could also mean inexperienced and unqualified. So depending on the context and the tone, sometimes I'm happy, sometimes I'm not so happy with the label.
First, I was quite happy because I was a quiet kid all throughout my childhood, so to be suddenly labeled as extrovert in my adult life, it was just surprising. But it also made me realize how little those labels actually mean, how anyone can change.
I don't think anybody likes to be given a single label. As human beings, we are so unique and diverse, and so I think it's not possible, and I think it's not right for us to be put into different boxes, each with a single label attached to it.
However, I don't really know if I like the label because I feel like it doesn't really encapsulate who I am as a person. I have lots of different interests, including lifting weights, but also other things, for instance, like reading books, watching television programs, running, spending time with my friends, or even playing with my dogs. All of these things are things I really enjoy that aren't just about being in the gym.
All right, thank you, everyone. And now, June and Enoch, now's the time. What's your final choice? Are you going to turncoat?
I announced that I would like to stay with the no team.
Oh, okay. Enoch?
I like the official announcement. I also announced that I'm going to stay with the yes team.
All right, that's the final result. Congratulations, post team. We are having another tie here. So yeah, for me, like before the show, when I received this topic, I understand why, like I can understand why labels are useful, but still sometimes I find it too limiting. But after today's debate, like you said, don't let the labels define you, but we can define the labels. I think it might be fitting that, we call Gen Z. What is Gen Z? Generation Z. It is using the last letter Z in the alphabet to define itself. Maybe because the time has come for us to stop labeling generations altogether. Well, this is the 6th and also the last episode of What's the Talk. Through the season, we talked about career path choices, consumption concepts, social media usage, and generation labels. You guys exchanged arguments representing views from different parts of the world, and I enjoyed every one of them. And as we get familiar with each other, there's more to share. We lifted the free debate time limit twice from 3 minutes to 5 minutes today because the viewers just love to see your war of words. And I would like to share an opportunity here. Are there any words you'd like to share with your partners or rivals or to the audience? We'll start with Enoch or Mahal. They stayed with us for all the 6 episodes.
Mahal, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess I can go first. Yeah, so I really love this experience. It was so eye-opening to hear how each participant had different ideas, experiences, backgrounds on pretty much each topic. And I also love how everyone gets to express their opinion without interruption, and then we have a full-on war in the free debate. And I have to say, for Jim and Enoch, this is probably my most memorable moment. As viewers of this show know, I was neutral for most of the topics. So there was a topic of spending versus saving, and I was neutral, but I was kind of like 70-30, something like this, towards saving. And then the debate came, and Jim and Enoch just knocked it out of the park. And I feel like this debate really changed my outlook on this topic, and I thank you for that.
Thank you, Mahal. Enoch.
Oh wow. How do I top that? I'm also very, very thankful, I think, for the show. But let me just make one quick point to for the debate part. I think a lot of times, particularly as Jen said, we're in a world where a lot of things that we cannot control. But I think what we can is who we are. That's the final line for me. So I think it's important to focus on what you can control. And if someone plays a label that you don't like, I think you have the agency to change that and be who you are. And that's my final word I want to say to the debates. And as you can see, I think I love debates in general. I think I don't necessarily claim to be good at it, but I just enjoy the process. I think debates for me is an intellectual and academic exercise. I love the idea how we use stories and how we use evidence to have conversation, and it's not just a shouting match. I love it when the debate is not about winning, but it's about understanding. I think it's when the debate is not about speaking and when the debate is about listening. So I love the show for many other reasons as well. I think I love the part when, you know, we are all the best self when we strive to be known rather than to be validated. And when we're just expressing view rather than impressing views. So I think this is the reason also why I'm honored to have joined all 6 episodes. It's so sad that this is the last one, but I have insisted since the very first episode to never choose a side, because for me it's important to have that part of it, because I want to be open-minded, I want to be surprised, and I want to, you know, be unexpected from that perspective. And last but not least, what I want to say, I said this in one of the episodes before, I value, particularly in today's era, having opportunity to agree to disagree. I think this is more important than ever before, particularly in the social media era that we live in, when a lot of our life is controlled by automated algorithm and artificial intelligence, when we have pushed information such that we become more extreme. I think shows like this help us to get more holistic perspective, help us to get a more complete perspective on particular issue, and a more international perspective too. So I think I genuinely hope this is not a goodbye, but see you next time. I hope there will be a season 2, 3, 4, and 5, and forever. So thank you so much, CGTN, and thank you so much, Foster Talk, and more importantly, thank you to my teammates and rivals throughout the whole entire season. Thank you.
Oh, you're making it so emotional.
Cry. Oh, no.
Cry out. Squishy.
Yeah, I do think participating in this talk, it's definitely an interesting experience, because in a way it gives me a channel to speak out the deviation the young generation like myself have been generating from last generation. I think it's important for us to speak out what's different exactly. And in the other way, it offers a chance for me to look inside, to reconfirm my own identity. When put in the context of this group of fun and meaningful debate with same passionate peers. And most importantly, I believe all of the guests respectively represent a sort of way to search for values and find our own niche. So diversity is always the fundamental elements of a sustainable ecosystem. So I appreciate CGTN and What's the Talk for putting such a bunch of interesting folks together and igniting sparks in us. And I'm really much enjoying it and looking forward to next season, hopefully. So it's not the end, and it's probably the end of the start, as Churchill said.
Thank you. And Jim, any words for your teammates, rivals?
Yeah. Well, if I had to give a label to everyone on the call today, I would say you're all great debaters. I've learned a lot from each of you, not just in today's episode, but over all the different ones we've done over the last several weeks and months. And I think sort of like Inak was saying, it's so interesting to take these topics and be able to look at them from different perspectives, to put them under the microscope and see how other people think about certain topics. And yeah, also just very appreciate CGTN giving us this opportunity to come together, and hope that we get the chance to do this again very soon.
Thank you. Kate?
Yeah, so big shout out to CGTN for uniting so many different people from so many cultural backgrounds, age groups, so many different groups, and for the platform to express us not just like representatives of Gen Z, millennials, or any other groups, but ourselves. So unique, so diverse, so inclusive. And it's been a great pleasure for me to debate with such wonderful peers at the same time. And I've gained so many insights from this episode as well as from many others. And I hope that in the future, we're going to have more debates offline and online, and I can connect with you. So I'm very thankful to this platform. Although we see each other online, it certainly made us and our connections much stronger offline. Thank you very much.
Thank you, June.
I am the newest to this family, and so I would like to thank everybody for welcoming me onto this team. And I think definitely through the last 2 shows, I find that everybody on this team is so eloquent. Everybody has such great points to share every single time. So like the different members, like what everybody said before, I think I learned so much from the show. And I think the producers, the people, the members, the cast, they have put in so much effort into this show. Like we see how it incorporates different like elements of technology. And so that's something that I really find very beneficial and good. And also this clash of opinions that we have on this show is so beneficial, and it's something that I value so much. And so yes, I'm looking forward to the next season of the show as well.
Well, I think that concludes our show today, concludes our talk for this season. Thank you so much, everyone, for your inspirational ideas and words. As always, it's been a great journey. And thank you, our audience, for watching, following, and supporting What's the Talk. I'd also like to give a special thanks to our great team of directors, producers, and editors. Thank you so much for making this happen. Hope to see you again in the next season. Thank you all. Bye-bye.